Hey everyone, on this episode of Teeter Talks, I had an amazingly powerful conversation with Madison Lambden. She is the founding member and vice chair of the Nightingale Centre for Grieving Children, Youth, and Families. We had a tough conversation about grief. She shared her personal story and journey with the passing of her brother and how that ultimately led her and her mother to create this incredible non for profit that creates community and support for children grieving. It's just an amazing story, but we really focused on arming people with tools and insight to support anyone who might be dealing with grief or who knows somebody who's dealing with grief. It was a tough conversation, but such an important one. And we had some fun too along the way. So hopefully you will learn something and share it. Please enjoy my conversation with Madison Lambden. Hey, Madison.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you.
I'm glad we finally had the chance to do this. I know this has been a long time coming. And although I would say I feel like the timing is ironically perfect.
I think so. It's interesting how that works. 'Cause
It
We
is
were
so,
delayed. We were delayed for a little while.
we were, but I feel like we are in similar seasons of life. And I think the conversation we're going to have today, I want to put a disclaimer on it, but I also want to say that there's probably even more reason for people to lean into this conversation and this episode today. So we're going to talk about grief. We're going to talk about loss. Um, but we're also going to try to give people the tools to support themselves through that, maybe support children through that, how to support their friends and family members through that. And certainly we're going to have some tough conversations today, but even more reason for people to tune in and absorb these little nuggets of wisdom that you will certainly share, because nobody is immune from grief. We're all going to go through it at some point in our life. And I mean, we all hope that it's very late in our lives and in the appropriate order that we hope life happens in.
Yes.
But it doesn't always work out that way. And I just think that I want to talk about grief. I want to arm people. And yes, this is a leadership podcast, but even more reason for leaders to feel equipped with these tools to support the people around them. And you may be a leader in the corporate setting, but you may also just be a leader in your community or your group of friends. So when life happens, I just want everyone to feel equipped as best they can, because I don't think you fully can prepare, but as best you can to support people through grief.
Yeah, thank you. And I think this, I mean, yes, it's very timely, but I want to say thank you to you, Marissa, for giving me the opportunity to, and I mean, for both of us to sort of open up the conversation around grief. You're right. No one's immune to it. We are all going to face it at some point in our lives, and we can all be better off when we know how to properly take care of ourselves as well as how to properly support people in our lives who are grieving. And ultimately, that'll just lead to, people feeling less alone and less isolated in their grief, which is the goal. So, thanks.
Absolutely. And I will say, well, thank you. And I will say that, I think you can find joy in grief. And I think you agree. I think you're a product of that. And I think you're a voice for that. So, I want people to really tune in and lean in and, trust that you're going to get some good, valuable, hopeful nuggets in this tough but important conversation today. So, on that topic, if it's okay with you, I want to go back a little bit to tell the story of your little brother, Nicholas, which I think probably set you on this journey to not only experience grief, but to help others understand and deal with it. And you don't have to get into all the details, but whatever you're willing to share, just at a high level, tell us about your little brother, maybe what happened, and maybe how that started you on this journey now with the work you do in the space around grief.
Yeah. So I was 13 years old when my little brother Nicholas, he was 2 years younger than I, died in a tragic accident here in Guelph. So I was born and raised in Guelph. My brother was a rep hockey player, although very young. And it was a snowy Sunday morning in February. And we lived around the corner from our neighborhood park where there was an outdoor rink. And he just went to the rink that morning to play hockey with his buddies. And it was such a cold morning that he was wearing his toque and his helmet was not on him at the time. And a 1 in a million accident happened. A puck from the game that was happening beside them, ricocheted off of the net and actually hit Nick in the head. Which he succumbed to his injuries a few days later after my family spent a couple days in Sick Kids Hospital, which is an incredible place. But yeah, I was 13 at that time. I was going through many life changes already, as a 13-year-old does. I was in grade 7, getting through middle school and ultimately a couple years away from high school. And it was just such a isolating and lonely time for me. And I don't think I even fully realized that at the time. It's taken a lot of work and growing up in my grief to understand what was going on with me. But that was the first real sort of significant loss in my life, and more so it was out of order. So we talk a lot about that in the work that we do in terms of out of order losses. I had lost my grandmother a couple of years prior, but our grandparents are naturally going to die before we do, in the natural order of things. So this out of order loss really landed me in a place where I felt very alone. I was the only one in my group of friends, at my school, on my soccer team, going through a loss of this magnitude. And I think that time for me, just growing up, grieving, I guess, one of the biggest things is, as a grieving child, having gone through what you go through, the world can be very scary, and you're always sort of wondering when the next scary thing is going to happen next. And I could get into so much more. There are so many secondary losses that come along with your big loss, in the sense of, I personally lost my identity as a sibling. I lost what I thought my life would look like with my brother. My parents, I somewhat lost my parents during that time to their own grief. There's so much that comes along with it. And so the one thing that was always missing for me, despite getting the support that I needed, I did, have a counselor, a therapist that I went to privately growing up. But the one thing I was always missing was the opportunity to sit across from someone my own age, or around my own age, and have them say to me, I know how you feel. I've gone through a similar experience. You get the point. So that sort of lack of connection, or the lack of community that was there for me growing up, really helped me identify a gap that we had in our community when it comes to supporting grieving children and teenagers. My mom kind of we both suffered the loss of Nick, and it was challenging for both of us. But our experiences were very different. She knew that she could reach out to various organizations that could support her. Her friends were checking in on her. She really had that sort of circle of support, but she always sort of recalls it thinking about me as, who was checking in on her, who was making sure she was okay. Because, as amazing as our friends are, and I have incredible friends and had incredible friends at the time, you're too young at the age of 13 to fully comprehend what's going on and know how to show up for someone in your life who's gone through something like that. So that kind of led us down the road of realizing this gap, and that kind of is how the Nightingale Centre for Grieving Children, Youth and Families came to be. And yeah.
It's a beautiful journey. I mean, the irony of this is that you probably never would have been able to, not been able, you probably would not have been led to this point where you built this beautiful thing that has served so many people in the community had you not gone through this loss. I mean,
Yeah.
one of the beauties of dealing with hard times sometimes is that it does give you perspective, right? It gives you perspective on how things could be worse or how lucky we have it compared to others. I'd like to think that maybe we could all find that perspective without going through such painful moments, but it is really such a beautiful thing that your family did, to specifically you and your mother, to build this community, to support and fill a gap that you experienced yourself. I'm curious, now that you work in this space and you've gone through it, what's your personal definition of grief, or how do you best describe grief?
Yeah, great question. And I mean, there can be so many answers to this.
Mm,
I'll start off, I guess, by saying, I ultimately look at grief as the change that we don't want, because
mm.
that I think that can be applied to so many different things.
I like that.
And grief, ultimately, it's one of the most human experiences, one of the most human emotions we will sort of feel and go throughout our lives, because it's a natural reaction to profound loss. And I think that it differs from other emotions in the sense that we can feel other emotions, and they can come and they can go for a short amount of time. I think there's some piece of information out there that the average emotion lives within us or lasts within us for 90 seconds or something
Mm,
like that. So you think about sadness or happiness, or anger, those emotions are often fleeting, whereas grief is very different. Grief lives within us. It never goes away. It, comes in and out. I mean, people often describe grief as coming in waves.
mhm.
There's some days where your grief, it can be very loud, and there are other days where it can be quiet. But I think the common notion of it is that it's always this sort of undercurrent that's kind of like following you through life. um, so I think, I mean, yeah, going back, I think ultimately it's just the change that we don't want, and it's super uncomfortable and it's super messy, and but at the end of the day, I think that grief is as individual as we are as our own human person. And as well as sometimes, if we're talking about grief as it relates to a loss, as individual and unique as that relationship that you've had with your person, it's never going to be the same.
That is so beautifully said. And I think, again, we talked about this at the beginning, everyone is going to experience grief at some point, and just almost accepting that we have to go through it in our own way. We're going to have to support people to allow them to go through it in their own way. But to know that it's kind of always there. It's this, I think, a lovely word to say, undercurrent, but it can also exist simultaneously with other emotions like joy, like happiness, like, you know, um, it doesn't have to be all consuming all the time. You can find a way to work through grief, live through grief. One of the expressions you use, this idea of grow in your grief. Can you elaborate a little bit on what that means?
Yeah, and I love this expression, and we use this expression a lot at Nightingale, when we're just talking about the work that we do. We're helping people grow in their grief. Um, I think that there's this misconception sometimes. I think the phrase "grow in your grief" is very empowering,
Mm,
and often we I say empowerment over, I guess, coming from this place of strength, because when you're a grieving person and you have experienced grief in your life, sometimes the word strength, or you're so strong or be strong, it's a little, sometimes it's not what we want to hear. Oftentimes people might say to you, well, you're saying like be strong or you're so strong, but I had no choice.
Right.
So we try to sort of move out away from that, and coming at it from this empowerment lens. And growing in your grief is really this idea that your grief is always going to be with you. If you sort of picture grief as this like little dot, or a big dot, your grief is going to, it might not shrink, it might not get smaller, it might not get easier, but your life is going to grow around it. So that grief is sort of always the same size, but it's your life
Mm-hmm.
around it that gets bigger and expands. And I think that is very beautiful and very meaningful, because it ultimately says we can still live a full, whole, beautiful, meaningful life, and we can still grieve, and that is okay. We are always going to grieve in some way, shape, or form, especially if it is a significant loss in your life of someone that you loved, but I mean any other form of grief as well, but your life just grows around it, and I think that that's really empowering.
It's so beautiful because you can almost picture it, right? You can almost picture
Yeah.
people evolving and leveraging that to carry on, right? Somehow taking it with you, but hopefully that the weight of grief becomes lesser over time, but that ultimately is a part of you that you carry with you.
Mhm.
You kind of mentioned it about, sometimes people with the best of intentions say things that don't always resonate. Before we go a little bit further down that path, because I know you have some insights on, and I really do want to talk about this because you know, going through what our family is going through right now, I have a lot of people who have reached out and said, I don't know what to do. I just want you to know that I would help you or I'm here. And honestly, that was enough. Or just knowing that was people were there was enough. But I want to arm people with things that they actually can do, because I do think there's things people can do. But I first want to understand, maybe in your eyes, having gone through this, why do you think grief makes people so uncomfortable?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it does.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that I feel like there's kind of three sort of things that come to me
Mhm.
with this question. Number one, it is uncomfortable to feel it. It is incredibly uncomfortable. It's incredibly complex. Um, Even I look back at obviously the grief that I felt and the grief that I still feel around the death of my brother. But then, even since then, some things that have happened in my life that have brought on a lot of grief. And, you just want it to be over, but
Mm.
it's not going anywhere. And that's extremely uncomfortable. It's extremely frustrating. And I think as humans, we sort of do whatever it takes to not feel it. Um, I think the other thing is we will do whatever we can to sort of protect our loved ones from feeling it, or you'd never want to see someone in pain or discomfort, and so we try to also shield people from that, um, and ultimately, I mean, it seems natural, but it ultimately leads to avoidance, and when we're avoiding it, we're actually isolating that person even more, or isolating ourselves even more.
Mhm.
And then I think also, it's great. I think that this narrative around the pursuit of longevity in our society is amazing, and we all want to live super healthy, long lives. But I think at the same time, our sort of fear of dying and death actually makes us fearful of grief and the feelings and the emotions that come along with it. So, I mean, why it's so uncomfortable? I mean, I just, as a feeling, it's horrific. It takes your breath away. It does so many things to you that you didn't know were even possible. Grief isn't just like being sad, it's being angry, it's feeling extremely exhausted, it's having no motivation, it's not being able to focus. And I mean, it can also be not just those negative emotions, you can also feel more positive emotions when you're going through it. But, I think at the end of the day, it's just incredibly uncomfortable. And that is what it is, but we have to feel it in order to get through it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things. And you gave a great example of people so focused on health and longevity and avoiding death physically, mentally, the conversation of it, the idea of it for ourselves, for our loved ones. It's just another thing that we can chalk up for human behavior that we just avoid because it's uncomfortable,
Yeah.
right? Like, let's not talk about all these things that make us uncomfortable, even though the most valuable thing we could do is actually have these conversations. And, the world that I come from the wealth management space, helping people deal with their money and their finances. I mean, people need a will. Like, you need to have a will. Like, I know it's hard to talk about these things, but you need a will. You probably even need some forms of insurance to protect yourself and your family should/when life happens. And I remember speaking to a client once who literally said, well, if I die, and I was like, well, no, when you die, like, this is, because I think we get all worked up about these things. And the reality is that the peace and the calm and
Mm-hmm.
the greatest gift we can give our loved ones in our passing is the gift of clarity, is of being organized, of understanding our intentions. It's actually the gift of having a conversation about life. Like, the more we lean into what's inevitable in death or illness, hopefully it forces you to really emphasize greater conversations in life and in joy and in health. Like, just, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, you can't have one without the other. Like, I feel to a certain degree when you're avoiding conversations around death, you're probably avoiding living. Right. And those two are so necessary in order to have this great, full, free life. You need to
Yeah.
have a few things in place that allow you to do that, just in case.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that
you know,
planning aspect is super important. And again, it's not something that people love doing. We don't
mm,
like to have those hard conversations, but at the end of the day, it's going to make things so much easier for you, your family, whoever is, dealing with things, leading up to your death or after you have died. Yeah, that planning part is super important.
yeah, and it's not just death, it's life, like
Yeah.
illness. It's the unexpected, like, just the way you defined it is dealing with things that we don't want to have happen. You
Yeah.
can't control every aspect of your life no matter how hard you try. Trust me, I try all the time to control
I
every
know.
single part of my life. It's not possible. And
Yeah.
I think grief comes from other things in life, and
Yep.
being able to have tough conversations, being able to be somewhat prepared for life's unexpected moments and how to handle those when they do happen is all a really big part of the process. So let's go back to this idea of what people can do, and maybe let's talk a little bit about your situation. I know you were a teenager going through this. Were there things that stand out to you that were very helpful for you in terms of things that friends or family or strangers did to support you?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's interesting when I think about it. Like, I feel like I wasn't fully registering at the time the
Mm,
things that were meaningful to me or specific things that helped me. But looking back now, um, I mean, it's actually even hard because I won't lie. The 2 to 3 years after my brother died, I have almost zero recollection of.
right.
It's just such a fog in my mind. But I would say so. Well, there was one thing that sticks out to me significantly is at Nick's. It must have been a visitation or funeral. I was given this little pocket token, and on one side of it, there's an angel carved into the front, and then on the back, the words "always with you" are carved into the back. And I have carried that token with me since 18 and a half years ago,
Yeah.
2007. And it's just always something that brought me a lot of comfort. So, I think sometimes it's not even just the things we say, but the small little gestures or things that we give to people that actually we have no idea the impact that little thing is going to have on them. I think another thing for me um, was doing things the way that I wanted to do them, and
Mm,
things that felt comfortable and felt safe for me, not what society or your friends or your family think that you should be doing. And I'll give you an example of that. At my brother's funeral, I mean, Nick's death was very public. His funeral had over 3,000 people.
my
We
goodness.
jam-packed St. George's Church. There was people outside. There was people watching from other places. It was massive. And, I think we've come a long way in the sense of this whole idea of like wearing black all the time when we're talking about funerals or visitations or wakes. But at that time, I feel like wearing black to funerals was still something that we did a lot of. And instead of, dressing up and wearing black and putting on a skirt or whatever my mom wanted me to wear, I wanted to wear jeans and my soccer. I played rep soccer at the time. I wanted to wear like my little windbreaker. Um, and I didn't want to sit with my parents at Nick's funeral. I wanted to sit with my soccer team and my friends, and just little things like that. I mean,
Mm.
people probably looked at that at the time and questioned it, but that's what felt safe for me, and that's what felt comfortable for me. Um, there are other little things, like I just think that, I've received text messages or phone calls from friends over the years, whether it's on the anniversary of Nick's death or his birthday, or, even like my mom and I, for many years, struggled with just the season of back to school.
Mm.
So just times of the year, the holidays, things like that, just receiving little messages from friends, letting them know they're thinking of me, or, here's a memory I have of Nick, or, a story. Those are just things that were very comforting for me.
I think it's safer for people to assume that saying anything is better than being worried you're going to say the wrong thing. I think a
Yes.
lot of people, and I've gone through my fair share of, losses in my life, family members, and, going to funerals, being at visitations, being in the aftermath of it. And there are people who just can't bring themselves to show up to those things. That's too hard for them, or they become silent or distant because they don't want to say the wrong thing. And it can be very upsetting. I mean, on the one hand, it's amazing how in grief, the most unexpected people can step up. And it's such a beautiful thing. Like you
Mhm.
get so surprised by people who, your friends or acquaintances, but you certainly didn't expect them to step up in the
Mhm.
way that they did, or to say something in the way that they did. But on
Yeah.
the flip side, it can be extra painful when the people that you
Yeah.
care about the most and you love the most kind of freeze in fear. And I get it. They really are. They probably feel the pressure of knowing that, oh my God, I'm an important person in this person's life. Surely I have to say something very meaningful, very impactful. And the reality is, it's just being there. And like I said earlier, with our family going through this right now, I've had people that I haven't talked to them since grade school, or I haven't talked to them since my first job in my career many moons ago. Or they're people that I kind of don't even really know, just reaching out to say, hey, I'm thinking of you. I don't, or I've had some of my closest friends say, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. Just tell me if you need something. And just knowing that those people are there. I joke like sitting by the bat phone, just knowing that if I need them, they are absolutely there.
Yeah.
That matters. And
It does.
there's varying degrees of levels of support, and the people that will show up and the people that are just there in kind of in the distance. And all of that matters. But I would encourage people, don't stay silent. Like I would rather someone shove their foot way far in their mouth trying to support me and
Yeah.
say something and be brave enough to reach out than to just not say anything at all. And I think that's what we need to encourage people to do, is just talk and reach out and show that we're thinking. And
Yeah.
yeah.
There's this saying, I guess, and it's you don't need to be perfect, you just need to be present. And I think that
Oh
that
yeah.
perfectly describes, what you need to be doing to show up for someone in your life who's going through a difficult time. You know, it might be awkward, and that's okay. Like
Mm.
your friend or your family member or whoever it is, they need you, and it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm guilty of that. Like, I think just in general, my nature, I am a bit of a perfectionist, and it's always like, what's the perfect right thing to say or the perfect right thing to do? And at the end of the day, it's you just need to show up and you need to be present, and you're not always going to say the right thing or do the right thing, but that is okay. So
Yeah. And I think too, it's taking, you mentioned you just wanted to wear your jeans and your soccer coat. I think it's taking the lead from the person who's grieving, right? Like, I
100%.
think sometimes people want to come in and take over and be like, let's get you away. Let's have fun. Let's take your mind off this. Or, if someone's battling a disease, let's sign up for the walk.
Yep.
And unless the person wants that, be very careful, I think, of maybe handling it how you would want it handled. Like, you
Absolutely.
really need to follow the lead of the person going through the thing, dealing with the grief, to understand, how can I support you? What would you want to do? What can I help with?
Yeah.
Because there are people who want to grieve out loud and deal with their grief publicly, and do the walks and publicly mourn, and then there's other people who don't want to do that. And like you said, they just want normalcy. They just want their life to be normal within the confines of what feels safe and right to them. So I think that's another great point too, is lean in and take the lead of the person going through this.
100%. And I fully back that. I think oftentimes we're so quick to, say things when at the end of the day, sometimes it can, minimize someone's experience, or offering our sort of unsolicited advice, because, something has worked for us. But it's so true that you really do need to follow the lead of the person, and what might have been right for you is not going to be right for them. um, I think that also acknowledgement and being there without any judgment is a huge thing.
Mm.
um, that idea of acknowledgement, you're not, I guess, understanding as the person who's supporting someone that nothing that you are going to say or do is going to make that person feel better. And I know
Mm.
that sounds a little bit harsh, but for them, things are really as bad as it is. And you might be able to make things a bit easier. You can, like, through your acknowledgement, through your just showing up and being and listening and bearing witness to. But I think knowing that what you are saying or what you're doing isn't making someone's life better.
You
It's
can't
just,
fix it.
no, you
Yeah,
cannot
you
fix
can't
it.
fix
You
it. Yeah.
absolutely
But
cannot
your
fix
point,
it.
you can make it a little bit easier,
Yeah.
but you're not going to fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about, as we're going through this, I have two young children, and I have friends who have gone through different scenarios. And at the amazing fundraising event that you and your mother hosted, which we'll talk more about at the Nightingale Centre, you heard from kids going through loss.
Mhm.
How do we talk about grief with our children without, to your point, freaking them out and making them think that, all these bad things are going to happen all the time and the world's a scary place and they should
Yeah.
be worried about losing everybody they care about? Like, how do you meet them where they are, but also be very honest with them?
Yeah. Uh, yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, there's a couple of things that come to mind. And kids are known for, their honesty.
Mhm.
And we know that kids are smarter than we sometimes think that they are, and
Mhm.
they pick up on things. And so they're really going to model our behavior as adults. If they are finding that we are being avoidant, or we're being secretive, and we're not being direct, then that's going to feel scary for them. I think that they need to be included in the conversation as much as possible, just to sort of open up that level of literacy and understanding, and connection with you as the adult. Um, there are like a couple different things, and you may have some teaching moments. I mean, I'm not a parent myself, but we find this can often be done, if there's you're walking down the street and there's a dead squirrel on the ground or a
Mm.
dead bug. Really direct, truthful language is important. And when I say truthful, I'm not saying that you have to, give away every single detail, but it's important that the message that you are delivering is truthful.
Mm.
So, if you are walking down the street with your kid and there is a dead squirrel or whatnot, that is a teaching moment. They might ask some questions. You can say that squirrel's body stopped working, and it has died. And I think, even just in our vocabulary as humans, like, we avoid the words died. Like, we'll say someone passed away or I lost this person. At Nightingale, and I mean in any sort of grief space, being as direct as possible and using those words, they're actually not going to harm anyone. They're going to make someone feel more comfortable to address it down the road or in that moment if they need to. Things like their lungs stopped working or their heart stopped beating, are all very appropriate, things that you can say. We at Nightingale, we often get asked the question about, so there's sort of the 5 C's around
Mm.
grief that, kids often have questions about. And so number one is, did I cause it? Um, and then it's, could I have controlled it? Could I have cured it? Uh, can I catch it? And who is going to take care of me? Uh,
Mm.
and if you can sort of address those big 5 questions, in asking open-ended questions with your kids, I think that it will really help them, be prepared for, future things down the road, future losses, future deaths, as well as really equip them to move through their own life with a lot more empathy, a lot more compassion, a lot more understanding, and just the ability to talk about grief and death and not have it be such a scary subject to talk about.
That is very powerful, the 5 C's for kids. But even as you say, be truthful in what you do say to them, but you don't have to tell them the whole story,
Mhm.
right? I think parents, we sometimes laugh about this as it relates to talking to our kids about the birds and the bees, where your kids start to ask questions and, you kind of like buckle down as a parent. You're like, you want to kind of dive in, but then
Yeah.
you realize that they can't actually process everything you're about to tell them. And you could probably give them the high level version
Yeah.
and then pause, leave it alone, and then maybe in a few months they'll come back for chapter 2. But I've had friends who have kind of gone all in and gone through all the details, and I think their kids were left traumatized because yes, you want to be honest, but that doesn't mean you have to tell them everything. So I think that's a good takeaway, in how to handle it with kids. But I also think it just goes back to one of my favorite things, which is, as adults, we need to get better at leaning into tough conversations with each other. As adults, we need to get better at leaning into tough conversations with children. And I think this will actually teach our children to have tough conversations with each other, especially in this day and age where we can do everything over text message and social media and digitally, and we don't actually have to look people in the eye
Yeah.
and say the hard things or deal with the hard truths. Um, it's a beautiful skill set to be able to do that.
Yeah.
We've talked about Nightingale a few times. Tell us a little bit about what it is and the work that you guys do.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Nightingale Centre is a not for profit organization. We support grieving children, youth, young adults now, and parent caregivers, and ultimately their families. And really, I say grieving, but I could be talking about anticipatory grief. I could be talking about grief because, someone significant in their life has died. And we do so through our grief support group programs. So these are, grief support programs, mainly sort of peer facilitated. However, these groups are facilitated by, trained volunteers. But we have groups for children, for teenagers, for young adults, and then parent caregivers. And each across the board, I mean, it's always age appropriate discussions and activities around grief. They occur 3 times a year in the fall, the winter, and the spring, and go for 8 weeks at a time. So that's our group programs. And then we also have a one-on-one family counselor, and that person will go and work specifically in the home or in the school with children or their families. Sometimes people are dealing with anticipatory grief, like the death hasn't happened yet, and maybe there's some legacy work that has to be done, or the death has just happened. It's very raw, it's very new, and they are not ready for a group setting. So we sort of have that pillar of our support and services. We also do education and training within the community as well. So working with the likes of CYCs within the school boards, which is amazing. That was one thing for me that I mean, we didn't really have that support at the time. So I think that is super important, as well as, the likes of victim services, and different organizations in our community who are actively, coming face to face with grief and death, in their jobs. And we want to better support and equip these people to help the people that they're working with. And then I would say sort of like community and memorial events are another big thing that we do specifically for the people that we serve, but also to, anyone in our community who is grieving, really giving people a space to come out and participate and meet people and do activities or participate in rituals that sort of support their sort of process through grief and help them in remembering and honoring their person is really important. So that's kind of across the board what we do at Nightingale.
It's so much. And then I just learned new things that you do that I didn't even know you did, because I already thought your reach was so vast. And it's funny, there's this expression that I love that, and I'm going to butcher it, but it says that we're most equipped to serve the person we were as a child. And as in, as we become adults, we really know how to go back and, a lot of us find callings or purposes in life that really were nurturing that younger version of ourselves and being maybe what we needed when we were a child for ourselves. And it sounds like you and your mom have really built something that you really wish you had when you went through this. And now you get to care for so many families and build community while arming them with the tools they need to not only just survive but to thrive through this. And it's beautiful. And I wonder if there's a moment or a story. I mean, I'm sure there's so many. I mean, at the event that you had, you featured some stories of some of the people that have used your services, and just beautiful, so touching. Not a dry eye in the room, by the way. I was like, why are there Kleenexes on these beautifully decorated tables at this gala? Well, now I know why everybody gets their own Kleenex. But it was so beautiful, because it was, yes, sad, but just also so wonderful, because these
So
people,
human.
yes, and oddly enough, like relatable in different ways, yet not relatable at all for so many people. But just really, we were able to connect and feel, and to hear how these people are doing so well now, and how well these children are doing, and everything you've done to serve these children. But is there a specific story or that stands out to you that you just think, even on the tough days, like, this is why I did this. This is why I do this.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I honestly struggle with this one because I feel like there's been so many over the years,
Mm.
and actually it makes me think I've done a really bad job at sort of archiving those things for when I'm asked questions like this. We're very lucky. I mean, as a board, we get to hear stories every single month at our board meetings. Our executive director will bring a story to us of, a child or a family that we've served within that month or whatever. That is, I mean, just incredible to hear. There is one particular person that comes to mind when I get asked this question, and they were one of the first teenagers to come to our youth program in 2019 when we opened our doors. And when they came to Nightingale, they were so angry, so closed off, didn't really want to talk to anyone, just not having a great time in their life. And they did keep coming back week after week, and slowly we saw this person just start to open up and share their story and
Mm.
connect with the other teenagers who were in the group at the time. And this particular individual has actually gone on. So one thing I did forget to mention is when we talk about, growing in our grief, at Nightingale, we have a program that allows our children and our teenagers who come through our programs to actually, if they would like to, come back and return as a junior facilitator.
Mm.
So they kind of return in a leadership role within our organization, to be there for the new kids and the new teenagers who are coming through, who, might not want to be there,
Right.
might feel a little hesitant, might feel a little intimidated. And so this particular individual kind of went on to return to Nightingale as a junior facilitator and has just flourished into this amazing, wonderful human being. They're going to school. They have, their career path set out for them, with what they want to do with their life. They're, living a very full and wholesome life compared to, the little girl that came in, in 2019. So I think just that like progression just goes to show that, I don't know, it's just that stories like that are what, make me feel like it's all worth it. It reminds me of myself a little bit, I guess.
It's beautiful. I mean, what more could you ask for? Right? To have someone kind of heal through it, open up, and find a whole new purpose for themselves in it. And again, like what all you're trying to do is create a space where people can feel understood and can connect and build community. And it's amazing when that community wants to turn around and serve its own community. I mean, it's a beautiful thing.
I always say, like, so, I mean, the kids and the teenagers that, come through our programs at Nightingale, and, they might come on back to be a junior facilitator, they might not, but they are some of the most like civically engaged
Mm.
people that I know. It's like they have faced this incredibly difficult hardship that no child should ever have to in their entire life. And, they've done the work, they're doing the work, and they just want to come back. I get chills talking about it.
Yeah.
They just want to come back and be there to support other kids who are in a similar situation that they were, and they want to support their community, and they want to talk about grief and open up the conversation about grief and death and dying and all of the things that, we find so uncomfortable to talk about. I just, yeah, it's amazing.
And I mean, you're talking about those kids in a very specific setting and the work that you do, but imagine them out in the real world where they're influencing their friends and their family in this way too. And I think we need more of that. I think that's incredible.
Yeah.
So hard to believe that all of this is really a passion project. You actually have another full-time job that you also do, which I didn't know about you when I met you. I'm like, wait a minute, you have another job.
No.
You are a sales and marketing executive. You're a very busy lady. And I know what you're going to say. It takes a village and you have a lot of help, but you do. I've seen you in action. You do a lot of the work and you're very good at what you do. But, I have to ask because just working in the corporate world and then working in not-for-profit,
Mhm.
do you see yourself as a leader, and or maybe like how would you define a great leader with all this experience and this really remarkably unique journey that you've had?
Oh my goodness.
No pressure.
Just showing up and being a human being
Mm.
is such an important part of leadership. I'm still I think somewhat early on in my career, but having, being in a leadership position within my family business, in sort of the home building
Yes.
space, and then being a leader with Nightingale. I think the most important thing that we can do is just show up as human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And my own experience, I think, has led me to that. I think, when you're in a corporate setting, it sometimes can feel quite robotic. You're getting things done, you're talking about efficiencies, you're talking about how can you be more sustainable. There's so many systems and processes in place, but I think what makes the biggest difference is if you're showing up as a leader and you're showing up as who you are as a human being, and getting to know your people on a different level than just seeing them at the office every day. Asking about their life and their family and what they like to do, and really showing that sort of empathy and compassion towards them, I think goes a really long way. I feel like I've always had the most admiration for leaders and mentors who I have learned from, when you can just sort of like shed the the shield that we all have sometimes, and really just show up as a human every single day.
Well said. I would completely agree. It's so funny. I ask everybody that question generally who comes on the
It's a
show,
tough
and I've never gotten the same answer. It's so funny because I just sit back, I throw the hard question out there, and I wait for someone to answer. And it's beautiful because you're right. And I think the humanity of leadership is often the piece that gets overlooked, as if I need to be something different to be a leader. I need to show up a certain way to be a leader. But in fact, it's just our humanity that,
yeah,
and our ability to see that in others and allow others to see that in ourselves is
yeah,
immensely powerful.
yeah.
Um, of course, time flew by as I knew it would, but I want to ask you a couple really practical questions, if I may, and then I want to ask you a few rapid fire questions. I'm
Okay.
just curious for you. We've already said that grief doesn't go away. You manage this every single day. Are there, habits or routines or things that you do just kind of high level that you really rely on to maintain your positive perspective on life, to show up every day and just to really kind of keep your grief in check?
Yeah. Um, Great question. I think that and I'm going to be superhuman in saying this, I actually struggle. I
Mm.
feel like my brain will often defer to the negative, as opposed to the positive in a lot of situations. But over the years, I've really learned, positivity is a choice. And I think, you have every single day when you wake up and you roll out of bed, you have a choice as to how that day is going to go for you. And there's going to be things that come your way that sort of derail that. But if in the back of your mind, you can sort of always have that agency that you get to choose how you react to a situation, you get to choose to be happy, you get to choose to look at things with a lens of the glass is half full. um, I think that has made a significant difference for me, especially in the last few years. But just, I mean, some other things I have definitely felt that, we know that grief and stress and trauma all, I mean, they live in our mind, but they definitely live in our bodies.
Mhm.
And if you are not keeping that in check, and if you are not taking care of yourself and being kind to yourself, down the road, it may lead to things that are greater than your control. So, in order to sort of manage that, because I definitely carry a lot of that, I move my body. I exercise every single day, whether it's getting out for a walk or just my workouts. I find that that keeps my brain, obviously, and my body in a state where I can show up, with a clear head. Lately, meditation has been huge for
Mm.
me. I never was a huge meditation person. I have a very squirrely brain.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I've really sort of begun to understand why people meditate. And, it really just helps me move throughout my day or end my day with a clearer mind than I typically have. Yeah, and I think just, taking care of myself and being kind to myself and um, fueling my body properly, drinking a lot of water, getting my sleep. Sleep is very important to me. I feel like it sounds so basic, but yeah, these are just, the foundational things in my sort of routine that I know if they're out of whack, then I feel out of whack. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
No.
and I go to therapy. That's a huge one.
Oh yes, therapy. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, it's. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's taking care of your mind and your body, and whatever it takes to give you the strength and tools to deal with whatever's going to come that day. If you're going to get a wave of grief, or if it's going to be a little more quiet that day, whatever it is, you can handle whatever's coming because you have put yourself in a really great state to be able to manage accordingly.
Yeah.
Okay, rapid fire questions. We'll be quick and fast on this one, but I'm curious. Finish this sentence. To live a joyful life, you must always or you must never.
I mean, it's hard. I'm going to say to live a joyful life, you must try to never borrow worry. That was one thing growing up. My mom always, always said to me, don't borrow worry, don't borrow worry, don't borrow worry. I am a very anxious person. This is something that really grounds me and I think also lets me tap into, the joy around me. Just focusing on being in the present.
Yeah. I always tell people that is a problem for future you, and future you has got this. So let future you deal with that.
Yeah.
Is there a book or a quote or a song that really help you through grief or that helps you through grief?
There are so many. I actually will say I kind of lost my love for reading when my brother died. It sounds so weird, but I was the biggest reader. And then it's like I pick up a book now and I can't, I don't know. I don't know what
Can't
happens. I'm
focus.
better with audio. So I'm actually just going to say, and I'm not even going to name it. There are tons of songs that definitely got me through, growing up, but a quote or like something just to keep with you, honestly, it's like day by day. I feel like that can be applied to so many things in life. And whether it's day by day or it's even more specific than that, minute by minute, hour by hour, if you are going through a hard time and the best thing you did today was get out of bed or take a shower, you're doing great. And I think we really got to just sometimes zoom out and day by day. Yeah.
Where can people find you?
Online. I'm in and around Guelph everywhere all the time, but yeah, I mean, for Nightingale, our website, nightingalecentre.org. We are on all social media platforms at Nightingale Centre. We actually don't have a space yet. That is something we desperately would love to have one day. We would like to have a home for Nightingale where we can run all of our programs out of and have our offices and stuff. But yeah, that's where Nightingale is.
Well, now it's out in the universe, so we're just going to watch it happen. Thank you. Thank you, my friend, for being here today. I know you and I have had a lot of good conversations and we'll certainly have more. And, I wish you all the best in this season of life. And to anyone who's going through something right now, there's always something you can do. If you're going through it or if you're supporting someone who's going through something, better to be present than be perfect. That has stuck with me in a big way. Thank you for sharing that. Lots of great nuggets in this conversation. And really want to thank you for sharing everything with us today. And I look forward to collaborating with you again soon.
Thank you, Marissa. It was amazing. I loved it. Thanks so
Good.
much.
Amazing. Thanks for being here.